I spent $19,500 on my granddaughter's sweet 16. The tent, the flowers, the catering. Every single thing down to the silver-rimmed plates. But a week later, what she and my daughter did made me wish I'd never opened my wallet. Stay with me through this story. And if it moves you even a little, please show some love. Hit that subscribe button, give it a like, and share it with someone who still believes in family. My name is Evelyn Okoro. I'm 63 years old, a retired nurse living in Atlanta, Georgia. My life has always been about family, especially my daughter, Monique, and her daughter, Sarai. When Sarai was born, she became my sunshine. After my husband passed away, she was the one who brought laughter back into my quiet home. Every birthday, every school play, I was there. I never missed a moment. So when Monique told me Sarai was turning 16, I wanted to make it special. Not just a little dinner, but a celebration she'd remember forever. I had some savings tucked away, my late husband's insurance money, and a bit from my pension. I told Monique, let me handle everything. This one's on Grandma. From that day, I threw myself into planning. I visited a vineyard venue that looked like something out of a dream. Rolling hills, fairy lights, and a pond that reflected the sky. The place wasn't cheap, but when I thought about Sarai smiling under those lights, it felt worth it. I spent weeks choosing flowers, soft blush roses, white orchids, and tiny gold ribbons for each centerpiece. The catering company promised a menu fit for royalty. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and a custom cake taller than Sarai herself. Even the plates had to be perfect. Silver-rimmed china that shimmered under candlelight. Every dollar felt like love given shape. But not everyone saw it that way. Monique began acting strange during the planning. She'd roll her eyes when I asked her opinion or say things like, "You owe this to her, Mom. You've barely done anything for her compared to other grandmas." The word stung. I had done everything for Monique, from raising her alone after her father's death to paying her college tuition. Still, I stayed silent. I told myself it was just stress. Big events can make people tense, right? Every night, I'd sit by my window, looking over the budget, smiling at the thought of Sarai dancing in her beautiful lavender gown. I didn't care about the money. I cared about seeing her happy. I thought, maybe this will bring us even closer. When the invitations went out, people called me to say how proud they were of what I was doing. I felt like my heart might burst with joy. My granddaughter was turning 16, and I was giving her the best gift I could imagine, a memory made of love. But little did I know, that same love would soon be twisted into something that would break my heart. The night of the party finally came, and the vineyard looked like a dream. The white tent shimmered under strings of fairy lights, and the sound of laughter carried across the open fields. Tables were covered in gold linens, flowers glowed in soft candlelight, and the sweet smell of chocolate cake filled the air. Everyone kept whispering, "Grandma really went all out for this." Evelyn smiled each time she heard it. She wanted people to see how much she loved her granddaughter, how proud she was of her family. Sarai arrived in a sparkling lavender gown that matched the evening sky. She looked beautiful, radiant even. Evelyn's heart swelled when she saw her step out of the car. She reached out her arms for a hug, but Sarai only gave her a quick side embrace before rushing off to meet her friends. Evelyn brushed it off, telling herself the girl was just excited. Teenagers could be like that. As the night went on, Evelyn stood quietly near the edge of the crowd, watching people dance and laugh. Every now and then, she heard someone say how grand everything was. Her grandma must really love her, one woman said. Evelyn smiled softly, holding on to that thought. But her peace didn't last long. She was walking past a group of Sarai's friends when she heard them giggle. One of them whispered, "Is that her grandma? The one in that old-fashioned dress?" Another said, "Yeah, the cheap grandma. My mom said she spent all her savings trying to look rich." They all laughed, thinking she couldn't hear. Evelyn froze, her cheeks burning. The dress she wore was one she had owned for years, navy blue lace, simple but elegant. She had chosen it because her husband once said it made her look beautiful. She turned away before they could see her eyes water. She told herself not to cry, not to ruin the night. But it stung deeply. The same people she had tried to impress now mocked her kindness. Later, Evelyn searched for Monique, hoping to share a quiet moment with her daughter. But Monique was busy posing for photos, laughing with her friends, pretending not to notice Evelyn standing nearby. When someone called for a family photo, Monique turned to the photographer and said, "Just us three," waving Evelyn away gently. Evelyn smiled as if she didn't mind, though her heart felt heavy. When it came time for gifts, Evelyn handed Sarai a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet that once belonged to her late husband, the man Sarai never got to meet. "This was your grandfather's gift to me," Evelyn said softly. "Now it's yours." Sarai barely glanced at it, murmured thanks, and moved on to the next shiny box. By the end of the night, everyone was laughing under the fireworks, but Evelyn sat alone by the fountain. The reflections of the lights shimmered on the water, and for the first time, she felt something shift, a quiet ache, a warning that love, when unappreciated, can turn into heartbreak. A week after the party, the house felt too quiet. The balloons had deflated, and the flowers Evelyn brought home from the vineyard were beginning to wilt. She sat at her kitchen table, sipping lukewarm tea, thinking about how beautiful everything had been that night. Despite the pain she felt sitting alone by the fountain, she still hoped that maybe Monique or Sarai would call to thank her properly, or even stop by with leftovers from the catering. But the phone never rang. Finally, Evelyn decided to call Monique herself. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. "I just wanted to ask if you could bring back those food containers I lent you. The glass ones." Monique's tone was sharp, tired. "Mom, can we not do this right now? I'm busy cleaning up the mess from your crazy spending." Evelyn blinked, stunned. My spending?" she asked. "Yeah," Monique snapped. "You went overboard, Mom. You made it a whole production. I'm still trying to handle the cleanup. Next time, please just let me plan things my way." The call ended quickly after that. Evelyn sat in silence, her hand trembling slightly as she set the phone down. She didn't understand. Why did Monique sound so resentful? She had only wanted to give them something beautiful. Later that evening, Evelyn went online to see if anyone had posted photos from the party. Her heart skipped when she saw Sarai's Instagram filled with bright pictures. The tent, the lights, the crowd of smiling teens. But her excitement faded when she read the caption. "Couldn't have done it without Mom. The best woman ever." There was no mention of Evelyn. Not one word. Comment after comment poured in. "Your mom's amazing. She must have spent a fortune. Such a beautiful event." Sarai responded to each one proudly, calling Monique the best mom in the world. Evelyn stared at the screen until the words blurred. That night, she lay awake replaying everything in her mind, Monique's coldness, Sarai's indifference, and now this rewriting of the story. It felt as though her love had been erased. A few days later, Evelyn was watering her small garden when her neighbor, Mrs. Grant, waved from across the fence. "Saw those party pictures online. Looked like quite the show," she said. "Monique told everyone you begged to pay for it because you were lonely and wanted to feel important. I told her that couldn't be true." Evelyn froze. "She said that?" Mrs. Grant nodded, a little embarrassed. "I probably shouldn't have mentioned it, but it didn't sit right with me." Evelyn thanked her quietly and went back inside. Her hands shook as she closed the door. The truth hit her like a cold wind. Monique hadn't just taken her money, she had taken her dignity. She had used her generosity to build her own image, turning Evelyn's love into a story for sympathy and clout. And for the first time, Evelyn saw her daughter for who she truly was. Evelyn couldn't take it anymore. The silence, the twisting of the truth, the fake smiles on social media, it all weighed too heavy on her heart. So, one mild Saturday afternoon, she got into her car and drove to Monique's house. She rehearsed the words in her head the whole way there, trying to keep her voice calm. She didn't want to fight. She just wanted honesty. When Monique opened the door, her face showed mild surprise, not joy. "Mom, what are you doing here? You should have called first." "I just wanted to talk," Evelyn said softly. "It won't take long." Inside, the living room was filled with remnants from the party, empty boxes, ribbons, and decorations. The smell of perfume and leftover cake hung in the air. Evelyn sat down slowly, her hands folded on her lap. "Monique, I saw the pictures online. You didn't mention that I paid for the party." Monique crossed her arms. "Why would I? Mom, you made the whole thing about yourself. You didn't even let me handle anything. People thought you were showing off." Evelyn blinked, her chest tightening. "Showing off? I only wanted to make Sarai happy." "That's the thing," Monique said sharply. "You always want to be the hero. You want everyone to think you're the one holding this family together." Before Evelyn could answer, Sarai came downstairs, her phone in her hand. "Are you two arguing again?" she asked with a sigh. Then she looked directly at Evelyn. "It was my day, Grandma. You didn't have to act like you did everything. Mom handled it. You just paid for a few things." The words hit Evelyn like cold rain. A few things, she repeated quietly. Her voice cracked. Sarai rolled her eyes and turned away. You don't have to make this a big deal. Evelyn stood slowly. Her hands trembled, but her face stayed calm. I see, she whispered. I didn't come here to argue. I just wanted to understand. Monique looked away, pretending to scroll on her phone. Evelyn walked toward the door, feeling smaller with every step. She didn't say goodbye. She just left. When she reached her car, her hands were shaking so badly she had to sit there for a while before she could drive. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't want to shed. She realized then that this distance, this coldness, hadn't appeared overnight. It had been growing for years quietly, like a crack in the foundation of something she once thought was solid. That evening, as she was about to leave the driveway, Monique's husband, Terence, came outside. Mrs. Evelyn, he said softly, looking uncomfortable. I'm sorry for what happened in there. You didn't deserve that. She nodded, saying nothing. He hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, I know what they did was wrong. Monique used the leftover gift money to pay off her credit card. She told me not to say anything. Evelyn's breath caught. She looked at him quietly, then nodded again. Thank you for telling me. As she drove home, the tears finally came, not of weakness, but of release. That was the moment she decided she wouldn't yell, argue, or beg anymore. Her next move would be quiet, careful, and unforgettable. Evelyn didn't sleep much after that confrontation. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Monique's cold face and heard Sarai's dismissive tone echoing in her head. The pain was sharp at first, but after a few days it turned into something steadier, a quiet resolve. She had spent her whole life giving, always hoping love would be returned in the same measure. But now she knew better. Some people only took because they believed they were entitled to. One morning, she called her old friend, Chaik Diallo. He had been her colleague at the hospital years ago and now worked as a lawyer. Chaik, she said, her voice firm but calm, I need to make some changes to my will. When she arrived at his small office, the smell of coffee and old paper filled the air. Chaik smiled warmly, but his expression shifted when he saw her serious face. Evelyn, is everything all right? She nodded slowly. It will be. I just need to make sure what I've built ends up in the right hands. They went over her current will. Her house, savings, and pension benefits were all meant to go to Monique and Sarai. For years, that had felt right. But now, staring at the papers, she realized they didn't deserve it. Not the home built by her late husband's hard work. Not the savings she'd earned from 35 years of caring for others while no one cared for her. I want to change the beneficiary, she said quietly. Instead of my daughter and granddaughter, I'd like to set up a scholarship fund for underprivileged nursing students. Name it after my husband, if possible. Chaik looked surprised but didn't question her. That's a noble choice, Evelyn. He'd be proud. She smiled faintly. He believed in helping people who tried, not people who only took. When the papers were signed, Evelyn felt lighter. She walked out of the office and took a deep breath. For the first time in years, she felt in control of her own story. She didn't tell anyone about the will. Some secrets, she decided, were better kept until the right moment. A few weeks later, Monique called. Mom, can you send the usual? She asked casually. Rent's a little tight this month. Evelyn took a moment before answering. No, Monique. I think it's time I stop giving money every month. You and Terence can manage. You've had enough help. The silence on the other end was sharp. Then Monique snapped. Wow, really? You're being selfish. After everything I've done for you. Evelyn almost laughed at that. The irony was too rich. You'll understand someday what generosity costs, she said softly. Monique huffed and hung up. But Evelyn didn't feel hurt this time. She felt strong. It was the first time in decades she had stood her ground without guilt. That night, she sat by the window with a cup of tea, looking out at the quiet street. For once, her heart didn't ache. She wasn't the helpless giver anymore. She was a woman reclaiming her peace, one silent decision at a time. Weeks passed after the party, and the silence in Evelyn's house grew heavier by the day. The phone that once rang constantly was now still. Sarai, who used to call her Grandma Evie with such affection, stopped reaching out altogether. When Evelyn tried calling, her messages went unanswered or were met with short replies. Busy. At school. Talk later. Monique, too, barely called. When she did, her tone was cold, businesslike, as if speaking to a stranger. At first, Evelyn tried to ignore the ache in her chest. She told herself they were just busy, that it would pass. But deep down, she knew the truth. Something had broken between them. The bond that once tied their hearts together was unraveling thread by thread. Instead of sitting in the quiet, Evelyn decided she needed purpose again. She reached out to a local community clinic where she had volunteered years ago before retirement. They still remembered her, Nurse Okoro, the woman with a warm smile and steady hands. They welcomed her back like family. From the first day, she felt alive again. The clinic was small but full of heart. The patients, many from struggling backgrounds, treated her with genuine respect and gratitude. They thanked her for every small kindness, a bandaged cut, a kind word, a smile. Evelyn found herself laughing again, telling stories, offering advice to the younger nurses. She realized this was the kind of appreciation she'd been missing. Not the showy praise of people who only cared when money was involved, but the quiet thanks of those who truly valued her. One evening, after finishing her shift, she came home to find Monique's car parked outside her house. Her daughter stood at the door, arms crossed, looking tense. "Mom," Monique began the moment Evelyn opened the door. "I need help. We're short on rent this month. Terrence's hours got cut, and I'm between jobs. Can you please lend me some money? Just for now." Evelyn listened quietly, her face unreadable. She had lost count of how many times she had heard that same plea, always just for now. Yet it never ended. She took a slow breath before speaking. "Monique," she said softly, "I think it's time you learned to plan without my pocket." Her daughter's eyes widened. "Are you serious? You'd rather see us out on the street? After all I've done for you." Evelyn stayed calm. "You've done what any daughter should. But I can't keep rescuing you from choices you make." Monique's face twisted in anger. "You're unbelievable, Mom. You're selfish and cold." She turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed through the quiet house. Evelyn stood there for a long moment, staring at the door, her chest tight. Later that night, she sat on her bed and finally let herself cry, not from weakness but from release. For the first time in years, her tears didn't come from guilt or fear. They came from power, the painful, beautiful kind that comes when you finally choose yourself. Word traveled faster than Evelyn expected. Within days, whispers about her reached every branch of the family tree. "She's cutting everyone out," one cousin said over the phone. "I can't believe she'd be so cruel," another added, voice heavy with disbelief. Calls came in almost daily, some polite, others accusatory. They wanted answers. They wanted drama. Evelyn listened quietly, smiling faintly on the other end of the line. She said little, offering only vague replies like, "I'm fine. Don't worry about me," or "Everyone has their own path." The rumors, however, were only partially true. Evelyn wasn't cutting people out of spite. She was protecting herself. But the version of events Monique had told the family painted Evelyn in a dark light. According to Monique, Evelyn had stolen money from Sarai's party fund, using it for her own desires while pretending to be generous. Hearing this, Evelyn felt the familiar sting of betrayal all over again. It wasn't just the lack of gratitude from her daughter and granddaughter. Now the entire family seemed to believe lies about her character. Evelyn took a deep breath. Anger bubbled inside, but she didn't let it control her. Instead, she turned it into strategy. She spent days going through every detail of the Sweet 16 party, digging out invoices, receipts, and bank statements. There was the catering contract for $6,500, signed and stamped. The rental fee for the vineyard, $5,000. Flower arrangements and decorations. Every purchase meticulously documented. Even the small expenses, like the silver-rimmed plates and candles, were listed in neat columns. She compiled it all, each document carefully labeled, a trail of proof that left no room for doubt. As she worked, Evelyn felt a sense of calm growing within her. This was not about confrontation in the heat of the moment. This was about control, about waiting for the perfect time to reveal the truth in a way that no one could ignore. Every phone call from cousins, every questioning glance from distant relatives, only strengthened her resolve. She didn't reply to the accusations immediately, even when tempted. Patience became her weapon. The suspense, the quiet withholding of her voice, allowed the story to build in everyone's minds. They all imagined Evelyn as bitter, cruel, or jealous. But she knew the truth, and she held it tightly. Evenings were spent reviewing the papers again, double-checking dates and figures. She knew Monique would eventually slip, reveal herself, or overplay her hand. When that moment came, Evelyn would be ready. No angry words, no shouting, just undeniable proof. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt a thrill she hadn't known in a long time. It wasn't the thrill of spending, or of giving, or of hoping for gratitude that might never come. It was a quiet, steady power. The knowledge that she could protect herself, expose the truth, and reclaim her dignity without stooping to anyone else's lies. She leaned back in her chair, sipped her tea, and smiled. The story was hers to tell, and she would tell it on her own terms. 6 months had passed since the Sweet 16 debacle, and Evelyn had spent that time quietly rebuilding herself. When she received the invitation to the family reunion, organized by Monique's cousin, she almost didn't go. But something inside her urged her to attend. This was her moment, not to shout, not to fight, but to show her strength and reveal the truth. On the day of the reunion, Evelyn dressed simply but elegantly. A soft cream dress, pearl earrings, and a gentle smile that held quiet authority. When she walked through the door, conversations faltered. Relatives who hadn't spoken to her in months looked surprised. Even Monique, who had always tried to act composed around her, seemed unsettled. Her smile faltered, and her hands twisted nervously in front of her. Evelyn's calm presence made her seem smaller, unsure. The reunion was lively, filled with laughter, hugs, and chatter about the past year. Stories were shared, photos were taken, and the aroma of home-cooked food filled the air. Evelyn moved gracefully through the crowd, exchanging polite words and kind smiles. She didn't need to announce herself. Her presence alone spoke volumes. Dinner was served, and as everyone settled, one of Monique's cousins, trying to be humorous, leaned back and said loudly, "I guess Grandma must have scammed her own granddaughter with that Sweet 16. Spent all that money and didn't even get the credit." A hush fell over the table. Evelyn set down her glass, slowly stood, and looked around at the faces in the room. Her voice was calm, steady, and unmistakably firm. "That's an interesting story," she said. "But let me tell you the real one." From her bag, she pulled a neatly stacked bundle of envelopes. Every receipt, every invoice, every bank statement, the tent, the flowers, the catering, every single dollar, all $19,500, I paid for it myself. One by one, she laid the papers on the table for everyone to see. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Eyes widened, mouths opened, and even the youngest cousins stopped whispering. The weight of truth filled the room. Monique's face drained of color. Her earlier confidence evaporated. Sarai, standing beside her mother, began to tremble and covered her face as tears rolled down her cheeks. Evelyn's gaze swept across the table, calm and unwavering. She didn't shout, didn't demand apologies. The evidence spoke for itself, and in that silence, the truth became undeniable. The room, once filled with laughter and casual jokes, was now filled with stunned realization. Without another word, Evelyn gathered her bag and walked toward the door. Each step was measured, deliberate, filled with the dignity she had claimed back over the past months. Heads turned to watch her leave, whispers rising behind her. She felt a lightness she hadn't felt in years. The quiet satisfaction of finally reclaiming her story, her respect, and her peace. She stepped out into the warm evening air, held her head high, and smiled softly to herself. For the first time, she felt entirely in control of her own narrative. A few days after the reunion, Evelyn's phone rang. She saw Monique's name flash across the screen and hesitated before answering. "Mom," Monique began, her voice trembling slightly. I need to apologize. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I lied, and I embarrassed you in front of everyone. I'm so sorry." Evelyn listened quietly, her fingers folded over the receiver. She felt no rush to respond. Monique had spent years taking advantage of her, rewriting the story of her generosity, and now suddenly wanted forgiveness. Evelyn finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Monique, forgiveness isn't the same as access. You can apologize, but that doesn't mean you get to step back into my life as if nothing happened." There was a long silence on the other end. Monique's voice faltered. I understand," she said softly, almost a whisper, before hanging up. Evelyn put the phone down and felt a quiet sense of relief. She wasn't angry anymore, she was free. The decision to withhold her approval, to protect herself, had brought an unexpected calm she hadn't felt in years. Later that week, there was another knock at her door. It was Sarai, standing hesitantly on the porch. Her eyes were red, and she looked smaller than she had at the party, almost fragile. "Grandma," she began, her voice shaky. I didn't know. Monique lied to me. I thought you didn't care, that you just wanted to show off. I'm so sorry. Evelyn smiled softly, her heart warming at the sight of her granddaughter's tears. Sarai, she said gently, I forgive you. You were only a child, and you believed what you were told. I know now that you didn't understand. Sarai stepped closer and embraced her. Evelyn felt the weight of the past months lift slightly. This was the connection she had always wanted, honest, untainted, and full of love. She forgave her granddaughter, but the wound from Monique ran too deep. Evelyn had no intention of reopening herself to her daughter's manipulations. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn threw herself into the scholarship fund she had established in her late husband's name. She began mentoring young nurses who were struggling to pay for school, sharing advice, encouragement, and small acts of kindness. Watching them succeed, knowing she had a hand in their growth, gave her a satisfaction that money or social approval had never provided. Her home, once heavy with tension and unspoken hurt, finally felt peaceful. There were no more calls demanding money, no whispers of betrayal, no awkward family dramas to endure. Instead, there was quiet laughter with Sarai, the soft hum of her plants in the garden, and the gentle rhythm of her new routine helping others. For the first time in decades, Evelyn felt a true sense of contentment. She had stood up for herself, reclaimed her dignity, and created a legacy that mattered. Her generosity was no longer a tool for others to exploit. It was a gift carefully given, shared with those who truly appreciated it. And in that, she finally found the peace she had been searching for all her life. Evelyn sat at her small oak desk, the sunlight spilling across the pages before her. A pen rested in her hand, and she took a deep breath, letting the quiet of her home settle around her. She had decided to write a letter to Sarai, a message to be opened on her 18th birthday. A few years away, but she wanted it to carry everything she wished her granddaughter could understand about life, love, and respect. She wrote slowly, carefully choosing each word. My dearest Sarai, she began, by the time you read this, you will be stepping into adulthood. I hope these words find you with an open heart, ready to understand what they truly mean. Evelyn poured herself into the letter, explaining how love was more than grand gestures or expensive gifts. She wrote about the Sweet 16 party, not to scold, but to teach, how she had given her all without expecting fame or attention, only to be met with disregard. She wanted Sarai to understand the difference between generosity given with love and generosity that is taken for granted. She wrote about respect, how it must be earned and appreciated, not assumed. She shared lessons she had learned the hard way, about patience, about standing up for oneself, and about the quiet power of making choices with dignity. Her hand moved steadily across the page, her heart lightening with each sentence. Evelyn included gentle advice, too. She urged Sarai to recognize who truly valued her, to choose her friends carefully, and to understand that wealth or gifts were meaningless if they weren't accompanied by gratitude. She reminded her granddaughter that character, kindness, and integrity mattered far more than appearances or social media approval. Toward the end of the letter, she paused and read back what she had written. She wanted her final message to linger, to echo long after the page was set aside. She wrote slowly, deliberately. What you give without appreciation becomes a lesson, not a gift. Evelyn closed the letter, carefully folded it, and placed it in an envelope marked with Sarai's name and the date of her 18th birthday. She felt a sense of closure, a release she hadn't known she needed. This letter wasn't about punishment or shame. It was about wisdom, love, and guiding the next generation with grace. Later, she stepped into her garden. The flowers she had planted for Sarai's Sweet 16 had grown tall and fragrant, their petals catching the afternoon sun. Evelyn picked up her watering can and began to tend to them, each drop of water a small act of care and renewal. She felt lighter than she had in years, a sense of peace settling over her. The events of the past months, the hurt, the betrayal, and even the quiet revenge, no longer weighed on her heart. She had reclaimed her dignity, protected her love, and taught a lesson without raising her voice or causing unnecessary pain. Her revenge had been neither loud nor vengeful. It had been graceful, complete, and entirely hers. Evelyn paused, taking in the gentle hum of life around her garden. She smiled softly, knowing she had finally chosen peace over pain. Do you think Evelyn handled her family the right way by standing up for herself, or should she have tried to forgive and stay closer to them? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and share what you think. And if you enjoy heartfelt stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new one.